make your world as big as you want it to be. Some people do want that quiet time, but ultimately we need to be connected. Isolation is not good for our mental or physical health. We need to have purpose. We need to feel like we're contributing in the world, whether that's in our neighborhood or whether that's going across the country to help after a natural disaster and clean up. We've had stories about people that do that. So I think that I think the days of just sort of hanging up the tool belt and just sitting on the porch, nobody wants it.
Welcome to another Finishing Strong podcast. If you haven't joined us before, Finishing Strong is dedicated to helping people transition from working full-time to something else, and then to integrate their faith with their new purpose. I'm excited to be joined today by Julie Pfitzinger, who's the managing editor of a digital publication called Next Avenue. I came across Next Avenue last year when I was developing the curriculum for the Finishing Strong workshops. Wow, it is full of great articles and resources for us as we age. This digital publication is celebrating their 11th year of operation, and it's a nonprofit produced by Twin Cities PBS. Over 80 million people have been served by this resource. We have a ton of common interests and passions to help people navigate this time in our lives when transition, ageism, and uncertainty can dominate our thoughts. I know you will enjoy our time today with Julie as we hear some great stories of people who are finishing strong. Julie, thanks for joining us here today. I've been a fan of Next Avenue for several months. When I came across it, I was like, oh my gosh, this digital resource is just full of information. So I've posted Next Avenue as a resource for people that come to Finishing Strong and on our resource page. I just want to read what you guys do, what you say you do. And it says, Next Avenue is meeting the needs and unleashing the potential of older Americans through media. Your nonprofit digital journalism publication produced by Twin Cities PBS, interesting, a PBS connection. Mm-hmm. And it's the public's media's first and only national publication for older adults, which is awesome. We're dedicated to covering the issues that matter most. So it matter most as we age. So you guys got started about 10 years ago. Tell us how it got started and kind of who's behind it, who was behind it.
Sure. Well, it did start about 10 years ago. Jim Paglarini, who was at that time the president and CEO of Twin Cities PBS, we're based in St. Paul, Minnesota. He was here many years, and he found himself being a caregiver for his mother. His mother was getting older, was having some health issues. And he was finding it difficult to get resources, to get support, to find answers to the question of caregiving. And he decided that he probably wasn't the only one that had those issues. And that was sort of the impetus for Next Avenue. Then he broadened the topic out to look at the different things that are important as we all age, our families, caring for a spouse or family member, saving money, planning for retirement, pursuing the next step for us, whatever our passion is, whatever our purpose is going to be. So that's how Next Avenue started. And also, fun fact, the title Next Avenue was an outgrowth of Sesame Street. So Sesame Street is first, and then you transition many years later to your Next Avenue. That's where it came from. So yeah.
Hence the Avenue and the PBS connection. That is that's right. Great. Thanks for the insight. So you're managing editor of the publication. What do you do? What's your role there?
Well, I have been here at Next Avenue for about 6 years, and I started as the editor of the Living Channel, and then in 2022 in January, Richard Eisenberg, who had been our managing editor from the beginning, retired from Next Avenue, but he's unretired. If anybody knows of Richard Eisenberg, he's all over, and he's writing a lot about this stage of life. So as the managing editor, I write stories. I work with our two editors who are both based on the East Coast. Mark Stein, who's our work and purpose editor and money and policy, and then Jimena Area Official. She is our health and caregiving editor. So I work closely with them. And we have two members of our audience team. So they do their social media. Sabrina Cruz is our newsletter editor. And that's the core team. But the bulk of our work comes from contributors across the country. And so we work with them. From first the pitch of their story all the way through to completion of their story and publication. So I get to work with people all over the country, which is fantastic. And, there are other sort of miscellaneous day-to-day tasks, but that's the primary part of my job.
Well, you guys have done a great job, and I've just found the website so easy to navigate, topical, and then subtopics, and then into the articles and the resources. So well done. I've really enjoyed it. So the mission of Next Avenue reads, our mission is to meet the needs and unleash the potential of older Americans through the power of media. You've served over 80 million people on the site, which is incredible, and millions more through other platforms and partnerships. It's unique because you're part of PBS. Two, you're journalists and experts, passionate about serving the audience. And three, you've built a network of impeccable sources and prestigious partnerships. So how are you guys accomplishing that mission?
I think what we're very responsive to readers, and by that I mean the what's important for people as they start aging. And we sort of put Next Avenue at 50 plus, but to be honest with you, Jamie, we're really sort of pulling that number down a little bit, and we're looking at people in their 40s who have needs as they're looking forward to the rest of their lives. They may be part of the sandwich generation, so they're launching someone to college and trying to help an older parent, and their health issues, things that people should be paying attention to in their 40s so they don't become problems when they're in their 70s. So really what we're doing is we're taking a look across the spectrum of what people are going to need, the information they're going to need as they grow older, the challenges they're going to face, the good parts, the bad parts. I mean, we cover everything that we possibly can. And, there's certain stories that we have that perform extremely well. So we know that we've hit a nerve of something that is that our readers are interested in. One of our top stories of all time is a piece that Richard Eisenberg wrote, Sorry, Nobody Wants Your Parents' Stuff. And that launched a whole avalanche of stories about stuff, because that's an issue, is people are downsizing and they're making moves to smaller homes or helping their parents do that. So that's something that sort of grew. We had no idea that would be as big of a topic as it is, but there are other topics that are more personal, emotional. Family estrangement is a serious topic for us, and we get so much reader response to that. So when we know that we have struck a nerve with readers, then we want to be we want to add more resources to their personal toolboxes and have information for them.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot in common with Next Avenue and finishing strong, and we've done a couple of things too. As I started off with sort of men in their 60s, now evolved. One, we've had our first weekend with women last month, which was tremendous. That's going to be our new normal. And out of the time we did with men, many of them said, gosh, I wish I'd had some of these resources when I was younger. So kind of started expanding that. And we did our first one with young people in their 40s and 50s in Colorado last month. And I'm doing my second one in a couple of weeks in Rwanda. So, we're a faith-based organization that's really committed to the same audience and trying to help people navigate. And for us, we're trying to help them integrate their faith into creating this new purpose, whatever that looks like. You guys obviously are connected with some of the great thought leaders in the world on some of these issues. And I recently heard, and I don't know how to pronounce it right, Ken Dykewald.
Yeah, Ken Dykewald. Yep.
Yeah, he was on a workshop that I did with the Modern Elder Academy, which is another great resource. And so both Modern Elder and I are probably doing a more hands-on, do a weekend, do a gathering, something like that. But Dykewald was on there, just such a great thought leader. And
Yeah.
you guys did an article with him. He's 73, going strong. He founded the Age Wave, and one of the things that you guys talked about him. He said they just commissioned a survey, and it discovered that a majority of the respondents aged 65 and over say they believe their best years are happening now and are still ahead of them. And as they grow older, that 83% of the population said usefulness matters more. Usefulness matters more than youthfulness. How have you seen those things playing out?
I think that's such an important point. I actually saw Ken Dykewald myself last year at the American Society on Aging conference in Atlanta. It was just dynamic presentation, and he talked very much about this. I think, retirement, later life has changed so dramatically, and I think people are looking at, here are the years that I have, hopefully. What do I want to do? How do I want to make an impact? And maybe I've had a certain career for 25 or 30 years and I've loved that career, but I want to try something else while I can. And I think that is something, we really value that sort of thought process on Next Avenue, because without purpose, your life is going to be pretty small. And I think that's also the danger. We write about retirement when people give up a job they've had for 20 years, that collective of people they've known. Well, they might have to meet for breakfast on Saturday morning once a month, but they're not going to see each other as much. And then their world can get smaller and smaller and smaller. And what we say is, make your world as big as you want it to be. Some people do want that quiet time, but ultimately we need to be connected. Isolation is not good for our mental or physical health. We need to have purpose. We need to feel like we're contributing in the world, whether that's in our neighborhood or whether that's going across the country to help after a natural disaster and clean up. We've had stories about people that do that. So I think that I think the days of just sort of hanging up the tool belt and just sitting on the porch, nobody wants it. And I think also the idea of the empty nest, if we think maybe more of women when children are raised, they have more to give. They may have had a huge career, they've raised their family, they have more to give. They're not ready to just stop giving and stop being who they are.
When you continued your interview with Ken, there was a great follow-up to question that, and said people crave purpose.
Yeah.
And so, which is so similar to where we end up with in a finishing strong weekend, is that people can walk out with at least the beginnings of a new kind of a purpose statement. And yet, kind of going on in the article, you said, yet culture characterizes retirement as just this time to relax and travel and so on. So what should older adults do? And then his answer was, I've seen it be kind of a blend. You're free from raising children, thank God. You may be free from having to work full time. You may be free from a boss you don't get along with, but you still have maybe up to 20 or 30 years more in front of us. And he says to have no usefulness during this massive stage of life, which he calls the third age, seems like a profound mistake. And not only does society take full advantage of the wisdom and experience and knowledge and resilience of older people, but it also leaves a lot of people feeling instilled with meaning and purpose. So it's just this whole elusive purpose that everyone's after. And maybe it's because I'm in my 60s, or because I started finishing strong and looking at and just so focused on that. What have you seen as some of the ways people have been discovering or reinventing themselves in their 60s?
I think, Yeah, everybody's purpose is different. I mean, I think that some people reinvent themselves by volunteering, or some people reinvent themselves by deciding to write a book or pursue music or things like that. That's one of the really the touch points of Next Avenue, I think, is our arts coverage, because we talk a lot about creativity as you're getting older. If you want to pursue music, if you want to pursue dance, if you want to pursue painting. Right before the pandemic started, I put together a guide called Releasing Your Creativity, and it was supposed to be, a way for people to see all the different options that they have if their purpose is to pursue the arts. And it was interesting because it was 100% complete, and then the pandemic hit, and so we pulled it back and reinforced it with virtual classes, virtual class options and virtual museum tours and all these things that you can do that still exist, because that's the reality too. For some people, they may have this purpose that they want to be engaged and be active, but circumstances might dictate they can't travel, they can't go to the museum downtown, but they can participate, they can be active online. So that's really important too. But I think there's all kinds of ways that people are called to sort of carry through the next part of their lives. Um, Caregiving is one. Caregiving
Hmm.
is a big focus of our site. We currently have a caregiving hub that the John A. Hartford Foundation gave us a grant to really dive into the topic of caregiving. We've created a newsletter, the 24/7 Caregiver, because there are a lot of people, their purpose in life becomes taking care of a spouse, taking care of a parent. And we don't want them to feel isolated. We don't want them to feel that they're off to the side, just doing their thing without being supported. And we've gotten a tremendous response to that newsletter. And so for some people, that might be the purpose they didn't think they were going to have, but that is what it is. And it's a way for them to be successful and not feel like they aren't doing a good job, because that's something that I think affects caregivers. But anyway, so that's something else. And starting a business late in life, we have a lot of stories about that. Family businesses, all kinds of things like that. There are a lot of ways people can fulfill their purpose, and we're here to give them options. So
Oh, that's great. Yeah, the some of the thought leaders like Richard Leider, build the Pope of Purpose, and
yeah,
he talks about the big P and the little P, right? Some of that big P is sort of that big dream.
right,
Used to call it. I just forgot the author. But he talked about the big, hairy, audacious goal, right? And the BHAG, and there's something big you can do. But Richard Leider also encourages us to just stay in the little P's, like every
yeah,
day, get
yeah,
up with, and he says his mantra is to get up every day. And how am I going to give? How am I going to grow?
yeah,
And just to even have that, as in golf, we say that swing thought
yeah,
as you go into your day is tremendous. So you've got a couple of stories. The story of the couple that, like, hey, let's bike from this part of the country to the next part of the country,
okay,
which was just an amazing story. As a cyclist, I loved it. Like, oh man, but call me. I want to go on part of that. So kind of a fun purpose, and they
yeah,
turned it into a greater purpose. And then we have the story of Sally Hinman, who even though raised in obviously in some element of a high society, became a Quaker minister. And she told her mother, I don't want to be a debutante, right? I want to
right,
make a difference in people's lives. And say that passion led to this tiny house village for homeless people, for 18 to 24 year olds in
yeah.
just northeast of San Francisco. What are some other stories? What are some of those favorite stories of yours, of people that you've encountered who have either reinvented themselves or just created who they already were, and just did more of it in this season?
I love that. I love that. Created who they already were. I love that. We've had several, and a couple come to mind. We had a writer earlier this summer named J.R. Rich. She was always, when she was younger, wanted to pursue acting. that, I mean, that was her goal. She acted in high school, went to New York, and developed some severe anxiety around auditioning. And all of a sudden, she looked at what she thought she was going to do and thought, well, no, I guess this isn't for me. I can't do it. She recently, she's in her 60s now, has stepped back into it. And she started with a Zoom acting class during the pandemic and now takes classes, auditions. She lives in New York City again. And to me, that's transformative. You think, oh, that door is closed, that window is shut. No, you can open it back up again. And that's exactly what she did. And I think
Hmm.
that was a fantastic story. Yeah, I think the story about Sally is great. Rhonda J. Miller is the one who wrote that. She's a public radio reporter that's now based in Kentucky. She's written a couple of really great stories for us about people that there's a fellow named Greg Sonnenfeld. He's not famous at all. He worked in tech in Boston, and he just decided, you know what? It's time for me to go back to my music. So he quit his tech job, got a job taking some shifts at Target across the street from where he lived. So that's what he does to make some money. And he's gotten back into his band and his music, and he's happy and he's happy. And I think that that's fundamentally Dan Shelton and his wife biking, it they're happy because they're doing what fulfills them. They've made their mark in certain ways in their careers, but it's time for them to be happy doing something else. So yeah, we've had a lot of really great stories about that. We have a lot too, Jamie, about travel. People
Hmm.
who have always wanted to go on the Camino Trail. We had a story this summer about that, about solo travel. People that, if they don't have a partner, they go, or even if they do, sometimes they go off. They take the trip they've always wanted to take. We had a piece earlier this year, solo travel at 82, and a woman who lived in a French farmhouse by herself, didn't really speak French when she got there because her arrangements had fallen through. She had the time of her life, and people really responded to that story. Even if you can't afford to travel to France, you can do something out of your comfort zone that you haven't done and test yourself in the best way possible. So we have a lot of stories like that on Next Avenue.
Oh, that is great. That is great. At the finishing strong gatherings, we kind of divide the weekend up into past, present, and future, and we start with that piece of the past. What have you done well?
Mhm.
Where have you been affirmed? What are your, and we do some assessments on what are your gifts and talents that you already have, and then we talk through kind of a transition time, and then it leads to developing a purpose statement, and so we've got to take the time to be aware of what we've done well, or maybe we haven't done well and we just want to try something. But for the
Yeah,
most part, I see friends or someone talk about, well, I'm just going to go get a job at Starbucks, or I'm going to go do something like that, which might be fine. That
yeah,
might be just exactly what they need, and to Richard Leiter's point, the little P, that might be their purpose
yeah,
for the time.
yeah,
But I often challenge them and say, gosh, I think you've got so much more to offer the world than
right.
that. So just take a look at where you've done some really cool things and see how you can do more of that in the future. You guys have you break out your core resources, and you've hit so the group of health, money and
Mhm,
policy, work and purpose,
mhm.
living, and then caregiving. And you hit on caregiving a minute ago, which gosh, well done. I really appreciate what you've done with that, because it is such an important part of people's lives. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about some of the other ones. So maybe just kind of if you take all of the different things that are a part of each one of those core resources. Let's just start with health. What's your goal in the communication in our audience with health?
That's a really good place to start. We cover a really broad range on health. We will cover the situations people are facing in their lives: diabetes, heart issues, hearing loss, vision loss. Those kinds of things where people are cancer, where people are looking for not advice, but maybe just to see options and things like that. Then we also look at the wellness part of health. We've done that even more in the past 2 years since Jimena started, where we're
Mhm.
looking at things like longevity. And what does that mean? That means meditation, that means yoga, that means walking, that means nutrition and brain health. That means, so we cover a wide range of those kinds of health topics. It's not just, you're not just going to find bullet points about, certain illnesses. You're going to find a broader scope. And then if we look at money and policy, big topic for our readers is Medicare and Social Security, and we want to cover those stories effectively, efficiently, because it can be confusing, and so we have many stories. We're always trying to lay things out in ways that are accessible for everyone and understanding. There's a lot to it. And
Yeah,
then
and I think that's one of the things for the most part, I stay away from in finishing strong because there's so much good stuff out there, and you hit the two pieces like how much does it take to live for the rest of my life? How and estimating how long am I going to live? When should I start taking Social Security, right?
exactly.
And what's all the supplement stuff? Super confusing, and so glad you've got places for people to turn in your resources there.
It's really important. And work and purposes, we've sort of
Yeah,
already talked about,
yeah.
retirement, planning for retirement. And then the living channel really encompasses a lot of the sort of the personal issues. That's where we mostly publish the personal essays. I would say, I don't know the percentage, but we get a large percentage of personal essays from people who just have a story to tell about their lives or their parents. Or we had Marie Sherlock, who's a great writer from the West Coast, wrote about her family's grocery store that she grew up
Mm.
working when she was younger. Nostalgia. I mean, we don't overdo nostalgia, to be honest with you, but we do it enough that I think people can see themselves or their story. In Marie's case, her family, all the kids worked in the grocery store, and it was meaningful to them. It gave them life lessons. So, we do that kind of thing. People,
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, family estrangement. That's something, if someone can see their lives in a story, that can make a difference. Grief and loss is a big part of our coverage on the Living Channel. It's something that affects everybody. And when you're mentioning too, we have an audience, obviously men and women, but sometimes can skew a little bit towards women, but we have a very strong male audience. And we have a writer in the Atlanta area who writes about grief, and he's a widower. And for men and grief and women in grief, very different in the way that they process it. And we want people to be able to, again, see themselves in that. And then we
And
have
the
also,
worst thing we can do on that is isolate. And guys are so easy to isolate. And so thanks for your encouragement in those
yeah,
articles to just acknowledge that that's one of our biggest risks as we are in this season.
right, exactly. And then have talked about travel pieces. We also cover a lot of famous folks who are meaningful
Mhm.
to our demographic. Linda Ronstadt, Ken Burns, Susanna Hoffs from the Bangles. We just did a story with her. I wrote some down. Oh, Kevin Bacon was interviewed for Next Avenue, and coming up at the end of October, we have a story with Bob Odenkirk. He and his daughter have written a book together. So we try and, we're not a celebrity-driven publication, obviously, but those stories those people matter to our readers, and so we like to. We have a group of writers that do really nice interviews with those folks. So that's sort of the fun part too.
No, yeah. Well,
Mhm.
all of those sections are of your resources are so important and inspiring. So I'm going to encourage everybody, man, if you haven't come across Next Avenue, do it. Just make it a part of your regular news source. And I do get the emails now as part of having registered for it. So we'll provide that link in the notes. We'll provide it at the end here today to have people do that. One of the things you did in your health section, which I think was really important, and we talk about this on our Finishing Strong gatherings too, and that's sexual
Yeah.
issues and
Mhm.
sexual health. And for those of us who are baby boomers, we didn't grow up with this as an open subject to talk about, and thankfully it's typically more open today. So thanks for your work on it. But in the article by G. Stone, she said, for most of my life, sex and sexuality were the same. Today, I know that sexuality is far more expansive than who we sleep with. It
Mhm.
sits at the core of who we are as human beings and influences our self-esteem, confidence, belief systems, how we show up in the world, and so much more.
Yeah.
It's complex, it's multi-layered component of our human identity that surpasses physical intimacy and sexual acts.
Mhm.
So, what do you think after providing those resources? What do you think that men and women need to know about sexual health in this season of our lives?
I, no, I think that they need to know that it's important to not, like I was talking about before, shut doors, close windows. There are still ways to nurture that emotional and physical side of yourself. Yeah, we have delved into that topic, I would say, a little bit more strongly in the past couple of years. We sort of started with the topic, with stories about online dating, because that is something
Sure.
that was very important to our readers, because many of them are widowed, divorced, never partnered. So we sort of started there. And then we moved into some of the more specifics of, serious topics that people might want to know about, and we're a safe space to find it. The
Hmm.
sexually transmitted diseases, vibrators, libido,
Hmm.
25th anniversary of Viagra. We had one of our writers write
Hmm. Yeah, I saw
yeah.
that.
Yeah, so I think that people want to be informed, and if it's a place that they're coming to read other stories, here we also have this too. And I think that we get we get we get good engagement on social media, fewer comments, but we get likes, and but people are less apt to make
Sure.
comments, but that's okay. We're not asking them to. That's not a
Yeah,
requirement, you know.
that's all right. That's right.
But we can tell that content is well read. So.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
One of my previous podcast guests is a well-known author, Gary Thomas, and he's got a book called Married Sex. And
Mhm.
we've invited him. He's on the podcast series, and also we've included a lot of his resources in our gatherings too. What are a couple of resources that you would recommend on this topic for people in their 60s?
Let me see. I think that, well, Next Avenue comes to mind. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that in terms of, there are books, there are podcasts that I think are more devoted to this topic than what we do. But I think that people are going to seek out what's in their comfort zone too. Do you know what I mean? I think they're going to
Hmm.
find a place where they feel like they can be comfortable with that information. And so I think, yeah, the people that we usually interview are medical experts or relationship experts. And if you read, like G Stone's story too, if
Hmm.
you read the stories, will often have links to who the expert is, and then you can follow them onto their webpage and find out more of what they have to say.
Great, great. Well, that's why you guys are a digital resource for us. So we
That's it.
appreciate that.
That's it.
So as we wrap it up, at some point you will edit your final article and go on to something else. What do you and you're so focused on this topic now, do you already
Yeah.
start thinking about what's next for you?
Yeah, yeah, I'm not in any hurry to retire, Jamie, at all. I love what I do.
Yeah.
And I think that, to me, storytelling of all kinds, I mean, that's what we do, on Next Avenue. Even if it's a story about Medicare, we're telling a story. And
Yeah.
I think that's where I'm very a big believer in the community of people who see themselves. You can see yourself in our stories. And the older I get, I see myself in stories that we have
Yeah.
on Next Avenue. And I think that I would always want to continue writing. I love being an editor. I love the bouncing of ideas. That's something that's always been really important to me, and something I've always loved in all the work I've done. Sitting down and talking to people about ideas and coming up with new strategies or new ways to engage people. Engagement to me is really important. So I want to remain engaged in whatever I do.
Yeah.
I'm not very crafty yet. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
someday. But
Yeah.
I think that I'll just keep doing what I love to do for as long as
Uh,
I'm able to do it.
Great. Well, we hope you keep doing it because it really is a great resource
Thank
for us. So again, it's Julie Pfitzinger with Next Avenue, and it's nextavenue.org.
you. Yeah.
Easy to find. And again, just encourage everybody to take advantage of those resources. And I hope to have you back. There's about 50 more articles I want to talk to you about. And
I
so
love that.
hopefully you'll come back sometime. So we
I would
appreciate
love
your
that.
time here with us.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jamie. I really appreciate the invitation.
Thank you for joining our podcast today. You can learn more about Next Avenue at www.nextavenue.org. Also, if you want to become an individual or corporate sponsor of the publication, please reach out to Emily, who is their Senior Manager of Development at Next Avenue. I'll put her email address in our show notes. You can also learn more about us at www.finishing-strong.org, where you can register for one of our upcoming events or sign up for a retirement coaching session with me. Have a great day.